Hello everyone and welcome to Green Tech Southwest. Sorry we're a bit later to get started. Just had some last minute difficulties to get on with, but hopefully that means we are plain sailing for the rest of the meetup. I shouldn't have said that because that is definitely jinxing it. But hi, welcome. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're feeling slightly more relieved now that lockdown restrictions are ending and you might even be able to hug people soon and all the good things. So we'll be getting started in about 5 minutes. So for those of you who are new here, first of all, welcome. You're in for a treat. Not saying that anyone who are more long-standing members aren't in for a treat, but it's just a warm welcome. Just be going through some housekeeping, just general format of how we run these meetups, and give everyone an opportunity to get settled, maybe have a cup of coffee, have some lunch, whatever you need to do to get comfortable. I guess that's the best thing about doing these online meetups, is that you just get to be in your pajamas and chill out and get to enjoy these events. So cool, yeah. So we've got a really exciting talk for you guys coming up. So one thing that'd be really good to know is, I know that Ness and Guy have been to a few of our other meetups, and in the comments, people have spoken about the Greener Hours app, and that some of you have already used it and everything. So it'd be really great to get an idea of who's actually used it before, or heard of it, and that sort of thing, and sort of hear your thoughts on that, because that'd be, I think, be really interesting for them to know. So if you are familiar with the app or have used it or are planning to, or whichever, feel free to just pop that down in the comments and see how you're finding it, really, because I think that'd be really interesting to sort of collate towards the end of the meetup as well. So we'll be getting started in about 4 minutes or so. So just to give you a bit of an idea of what we tend to do in terms of structure, we'll be having a talk with, they'll be hosting their talk, Guy and Vanessa, and during that we'll be putting up a number of different polls, which you can answer, and some which relate to the talk and everything. So it's always good to get your thoughts there. They'll just pop up at the bottom right hand of your screen when we post one. So try and get involved if you like. I'll always make sure that this information is shared at the end of when I do the follow-up, so the answers aren't lost into the ether. We also will have a Q&A session at the end, so you'll have an opportunity to ask any questions that you've got for them, or for anyone in the group, really. We do try to pick them up as much as we can out of the comments, but we do have an ask a question section. Sorry, I haven't really spoken much this morning. I probably should have done some warm-ups. So we've got an ask a question section down the bottom. If you've got any questions, try and put them in there, and we'll be able to go through them at the end. Because also what this has is a really useful little tool where you can upvote someone else's question, just in case there's loads and we're running out of time or whichever. We just want to make sure that as many of your questions gets answered as possible. But like I said, we will be filtering them out from the comments, so don't worry, it's not hard and fast rule. The comment section is a really great tool for this meetup. I absolutely love it. We love how chatty everyone is and how interactive everyone is, sharing information, sharing resources, and just really it gives a great community feel. So feel free to introduce yourself. Just in case anyone doesn't know who I am, I'm Ellen. I am one of the co-founders of Green Tech Southwest, but a little bit more on us later or further down the line. Feel free to sort of say hello in the comment section, where you're coming from, what brought you here, what you do, that sort of thing. Because it's really great to see people interacting in the comment section. We've had a lot of people who needed help on projects, and people have been getting in touch with and that sort of thing. So if there's anything you do want to share, just pop it down there, and we'll make sure that information is available to everyone who attended the meetup or is part of the meetup group as well. We'll also be doing, this is a community. We want everyone to have as much opportunity to benefit from it. So we will be doing a 60-second intro in a little bit. Just, it's an opportunity for whoever wants to, if they've got anything to shout out, either an event, or it can be a project that you need help with, or if you just think there's something that's useful for the community to know, we'll invite you on screen for 60 seconds, just to give a little overview of what you need help with, and people can, if you leave your comments, your contact details, people can get in touch with you after that as well. So if that is something you'd be interested in, just pop your name down and we'll invite you up on screen when the time comes. So hi Austin, nice to meet you, coming from the United States. Amazing. We love how international we've become. I guess another benefit from doing these online. Well, are you currently living in Germany? Sorry, I should have read on before I started rambling on. But nice, well done for wrapping up your Masters in Climate and Environmental Sciences. Definitely cause for celebration and very current, so glad you can join us. We'll be getting started in the next minute or so. Just last minute opportunity for people to just get settled and get all their internet working and sound working and all that stuff. We know how fun it can be over the internet. For anyone who's just joined us, welcome. You're in the right place. Hannah's come to save the day.
Hello, Ellen.
Hello.
I just, because I'm somewhere different, when the camera turned on, then I was like really close, a bit scary for everyone. Must sit back.
Cool. No, I've got a new laptop stand and it's created a whole new dynamic for me. So.
Yeah, I know. I got so used to being in my little boxy office. It's kind of a bit wild being here today.
Yeah.
Cool. And we have Mike as well. Awesome.
Hi, everyone.
Mike. Great.
Yeah, sorry I'm late.
You're always the most on time.
Yeah,
awesome. And it's nice. We've got a few people introducing themselves in the comments, which is really cool. And Rob is someone I know well. So, hey, Rob, I hope you're good. I hope Mo and the kids are good too. Cool. Right. So, shall we get cracking? Shall I share some slides and we'll intro properly and crack on? Okay, right. I've already practiced this once. Let's hope. Let's hope I can get this, nail this right now. Chrome tab, this one. Let's share you. Great. How's that? We got slides?
Perfect.
Yay! Awesome. Great. Okay. Great. So, welcome everybody. Thank you all so much for joining us today. You are here at the Green Tech Southwest meetup, or community. We like to think of ourselves as a community rather than just a meetup. Many of you will have joined our events before, but for those of you that haven't joined us before, we'll just do a couple of quick slides now just to let you know who we are and what we're all about. Before we get into that, I'll just let you know that we are sponsored by AdLib Recruitment. So Nick, I believe, is here with us today. So Nick, thank you ever so much for your continued sponsorship and support of the group. It's really, really appreciated. We're also supported with in-kind support by the Future Economy Network and Climate Action Tech. And we'll tell you loads more about both of those groups at the end of our session today. If you can't make it, if you can't stick around till the end, we'll share this slide pack, and this slide pack will have more deets for you in there. We are on social media, and Mike, I believe we'll have Joe, the ever fantastic Joe Mawson, doing live tweeting for us. Joe, I don't know if we ever show you enough appreciation, because what you do behind the scenes is so brilliant. So thank you, Joe. You are a master live tweeter. Seriously good. If you want to follow along with the live tweets, you can catch us at greentech_SWest. Not the catchiest of names, we know, but hopefully, it is a name that does what it says on the tin. We also do loads on LinkedIn as well, so you can catch our hashtag GreenTechSW on LinkedIn as well. Not only do we do sort of a lot of live tweeting and stuff like that, but also in between meetups we share loads of cool content, especially stuff happening in the Southwest region as well. So if you want to keep tabs on what's going on with Green Tech Southwest, do catch us on social media. Right, so I'm now going to move slides. So very quickly, we are your organisers, the three of us on your screen. We have Ellen, myself, Hannah and Mike. We're your organisers, we're your co-founders. Do any of you want to say anything, Mike and Ellen? I know we've sort of trying to keep this bit really short, aren't we now?
Well, just hello and welcome. Yeah, as I said, I am Ellen, and I co-founded Green Tech Southwest with Mike and Hannah. I've recently left AdLib, but obviously still great to be able to be part of the meetup and stay in touch with these guys.
Oh, we couldn't do this without you, Ellen. You are a core part of the triangle of Green Tech Southwest, that's for sure. Cool. Mike, do you want to say a quick hi or?
Yeah, hi everyone. I am still at AdLib, very much so. But yeah, I'm just really looking forward to this talk. I've been running Green Hours app on my phone for a few days and really enjoyed using it. So yeah, just keen to hear more about the plans for the future.
Awesome.
Looks a fantastic app if you haven't tried it.
I think we're all really interested in this one, aren't we, today? This will be a good use of tech doing useful things for climate, because a lot of the time we talk about tech not being so good for the climate. So that'll be good. Right, moving on. I'm in danger of gas bagging too much. So just a quickie, Green Tech Southwest. So if you haven't been along to us or before, or you're joining us for the first time today, we are a community-run group, so there's no money involved. We do it because Mike, myself, and Ellen are all super passionate about this topic. We are aiming to create a space or a community to share insight and generate discussion about how technology relates to the environment. So sometimes we talk about tech in a positive light, and sometimes we talk about it in a negative light, and we talk about the unseen and hidden impacts. But today is all positivity, so hooray, that's good. It's a rainy day, so we need positivity, right? So that's good. At the heart of what we do is we aim to create an open and inclusive ethos. So we thought very hard about how we run these meetups to make them as friendly and as welcoming to everyone that we possibly can. So we run a range of topics. So whether you're new to tech or you're a tech pro, you're very welcome, and hopefully you'll find something useful to you here. And whether you know a lot about climate change or you don't know a lot about climate change, again, we try and give you a broad range of topics and speakers to interest you. And even if you're not in the southwest of England, and I know many of you aren't today, you've joined us from far-flung places, you are very, very, very welcome to be here with us. In fact, we love to have people from outside the region join us as well. So a massive welcome to everyone today. Thank you so much for being here and being a part of our Green Tech Southwest community. Mike has been very diligently there sharing our code of conduct and group constitution in the comments. So if you are interested in taking a peek at the sort of goals that we've set ourselves with the group, you are very welcome to do so. I think that's all really we have to say on the group and what we do. So I'm going to move on to our community 60-second intros. Actually quite a surprising tongue twister, that one. I do not want to try and say it too fast too many times. So we are, of course, running all of our meetups online these days, and one of the key things that we set out to achieve with Green Tech Southwest was to create opportunities for people to network and meet each other. And these community 60-second intros are intended to help fill that gap a little bit. So it's kind of the equivalent, if we were all in a room together, you might stand up, give everyone a wave and say, hey, I'd like to introduce myself and share something in the green tech space that I'm working on. Perhaps you might want to ask for help or guidance, or maybe share a knowledge or resource that you've come across recently with others. This is our opportunity to open up the floor to you, our community, and to let you broadcast or say something if you would like to. So in order to do that, please tell us in the comments. I'm going to point that way, but maybe they're that way on your screen, I'm not sure. Yeah, one of the ways. They're over here for me. Type in the comments if you feel like taking advantage of our community 60-second intro slot. I haven't noticed anyone put their hands up today. We normally have a few takers. I think 6 has been our most, hasn't it? We had 6 in one session. We normally have 2 or 3. So if anyone wants to say hi, introduce themselves, even if you don't have anything particularly exciting to say, but just want to say hi to the community, you're very, very welcome to take up that slot now. So I'm just going to let the tumbleweed roll. It's still rolling. I don't see anybody popping their hands up just yet. Okay. All right, I'm not seeing anyone up for it today. So I've got something then that I put in my back pocket. So I've been having a chat with some people about some new lithium mines that have been proposed down in the southwest, down in Cornwall. Mike and Ellen, I haven't had a chance to mention this to you. As you know, I'm on holiday at the moment. But if there is anybody sort of in the deeper, darker parts of southwest, so particularly Cornwall, that is interested in finding out more about these proposed lithium mines, let us know. The reason why this is relevant is because lithium is a core mineral that's used in pretty much all the tech and batteries. So it's a really interesting topic to learn more about, and that is very relevant to the southwest. So if anyone's interested in learning more about lithium mines, let me know, or having a chat about them, we can do so. Okay, I don't think anyone's up for a 60-second intro today. Is that because we've all been allowed to socialise again? We're all back in the real world a little bit, aren't we?
Maybe a few people out for lunch
Oh,
somewhere. I don't know.
Okay, well, that's cool. We're not going to force anyone to do anything they don't feel like. So hopefully, Mike, do you think we could get Guy and Ness on a little bit earlier? And we can crack on.
Yep, I'll invite them now.
Fantastic. Okay, I'm just going to share our slides. So actually, we have two speakers for you today, Ness and Guy from Greener Hours. Mike, I'll just let you do, because I know you've got a heavy job on your hands today doing all the admin yourself. So I'll just let Ness and Guy pop on screen, and then myself and Ellen and the slides will pop off, and we will hand the platform and the stage over to you guys. Okay, see you later. Good luck.
See you in a bit.
Ness and Guy, not that you need it. We know you.
Oh, I've cut her off. Sorry, Hannah, if she's still there. Hi, Ness, how you doing?
I'm very well. How are you, Mike?
Great stuff. Yeah, I'm very well, thanks. Thanks very much, both of you, for joining us on this one. We're all, as you can tell, we're all really excited to hear more about Greener Hours. So I won't sort of take up too much of your time, because I know intro is part of the talk. But hi to Guy as well. Guy is going to do some talking about behavioural science about midway through the talk. So yeah, thank you for coming along as well, Guy. Great stuff. Well, hopefully there's no technical hitches, but yeah, I'm going to minimise myself and leave it with you, you both actually, to start with, and then I think, Ness, you're going to sort of start, aren't you? Cool.
Right, hopefully you can see that. First of all, I just want to thank Mike and Hannah and Ellen for inviting us today. We've really loved being part of the group. It's been so welcoming and supportive, but also Greener Hours has benefited enormously from a number of people from this group actually signing up to our user trials, which we've got so much to be grateful for, because that's just such a critical part of the Greener Hours product development process. So thank you. So a little bit about what we're going to share today. Before we start, I'd like to introduce Guy, who's my co-founder and also my husband. Greener Hours is all about behaviour change. It's our mission to get people to use energy when it's clean. So Guy is actually our behavioural scientist, keeping the rest of us on track. Guy.
Hello, everyone. Yes, very good to be here. Just mirror the same thing. Thank you so much for the invite. And it's good to speak to everyone. I do need to say, it is absolutely sod's law that DPD have booked in a pickup almost perfectly for the time that we're speaking here. So if I suddenly jump up and run out, I'm very sorry. It'll be 30 seconds, but you couldn't make it up, I think, you know, in terms of them booking it in perfectly. But very good to be here. Nice to meet you all.
So a little bit about my own startup journey. Our key target markets, or one of our key target markets, are families. So it's partly because families are the ones with the heavy washing loads, the dishwashers, and so on. So it's perhaps not surprising that my own startup journey began when I became a mum. I was working for Philips, the electronics manufacturer, and was going on maternity leave. And as a farewell gift, I was given a big appliance bundle, and that was bottle warmers, sterilizers, breast pumps, baby monitors, thermometers, it just anything with a plug on the end. And it gave me a little insight into what having a family might mean for my own carbon footprint. So it wasn't really, though, until the baby actually arrived and started pushing out piles of washing that the real impact of my carbon footprint sort of sunk in. Consumed by guilt, I gave up tumble drying, and I developed a product for air drying kids' clothes. Luckily, my mini hands air dryer is still patent pending. But that besides, it's partly the guilt that drives me on. I'm always looking for greener ways to do things, and obviously want the world to be free of this climate threat for the next generation. But on that note, I thought it might be interesting just to show this. Some of you have probably seen it. It came out last month from Ipsos. It's a study that they've recently done. It was in about 30 countries, I think. But I just thought it was interesting because it shows what a complex issue it is, and how little is understood about our sort of individual carbon footprints. Really, I mean, there are plenty of assumptions made here, but it's interesting just to see, if you look at the bar chart, it just shows what people think have the greatest impact. And you can see on the right-hand side, it shows the actual ranking. So I don't know whether this is wishful thinking, because some of these things are the easier things to do, or whether people are just getting it wrong. But this clearly shows that people are underestimating the most impactful actions and overestimating the least impactful ones. Which sort of takes us to energy, really. In our consumer research, we have found there's a lot of misunderstanding about energy. We sort of see three areas. I mean, firstly, there's that people don't really know the power they have to make a difference, and they don't see that when you use energy is as important as what you use, and also that there's little understanding about carbon intensity, that people don't understand that it varies throughout the day, and also that it's set to vary even more over time as we become more and more reliant on electricity. But we did find that telling people was a real sort of light bulb moment, and that it really sort of dawned on people how it works. But this sort of isn't helped by the energy market at the moment, that there are hundreds of green tariffs available sort of on the market, but not all of them are actually sort of green. There's a lot of greenwashing around this issue, as I'm sure you're all aware. And that we found when we talked to people, a lot of people didn't know that it's the national grid that decides what electricity comes into their homes, not their energy supplier. And that actually, unless they have solar panels on their roof or generating their own electricity, they will get the same electricity as their neighbours. It's a complex market, as I've said. There are many energy companies, we feel, that are making misleading claims. Some of them are buying up these second-hand certificates to claim that they support renewable generations. Not all, but this is an issue. But that said, whatever tariff you're on, it does make sense to switch on appliances at times when carbon intensity is at its lowest. So that, I thought, would be a good time for me to introduce greener hours. It's possibly appropriate that it comes from the next generation. So if I show you this film, I'm hoping it will work. Shout if it doesn't. The most important thing is what's being said. Have a listen.
Did you know the electricity we use at home creates different amounts of carbon, depending on how it's made? Sometimes it's lots of carbon, and other times, like when the wind is blowing or the sun is shining, the carbon is almost zero. The amount of carbon goes up and down every moment of the day, just like being on a swing. Up, down, all day long. With greener hours, we can see when the electricity coming into our home is clean. And if it is, we can use the time to do our washing, clean the dishes, or dry our clothes. So we can still get our jobs done and save carbon while we do it. Let's use energy when it's clean and not when it's not.
So Greener Hours is essentially an app. It's a carbon intensity forecast. So just like the weather forecast, it'll tell you ahead of time what the carbon intensity coming into your home will be each day. It takes daily grid data from your region and gives you the lowest carbon intensity time. This is what we call our Greener Hour. You can see on the left there, there's a graph that you can sort of plan ahead. And in fact, if you have the app, you also receive notifications so that you can get notifications the night before, for example, and plan ahead when to use your appliances the following day. Pledging ahead will also give you Greener Hours points, and these ultimately will be able to be spent on sort of pro-social benefits for green causes and so on. So we thought perhaps you'd like some insights into what we found from talking to our users. We've done 3 major trials. The first one was way back in November 2019, and we recruited a number of Bristol households. We convened a WhatsApp group. It was a very low-tech solution because we didn't have our app in those days. We were literally trying to prove the concept to see if it resonated with people. So the results we got were really promising. And you can see it was only a 2-week trial, but the results are here showing 188 shifts across the trial. So that's people moving their dishwashers and washing machines and tumble dryers to times of lower carbon intensity. So really positive and really high engagement levels as well across the group. A little bit here shows how the trial was received. So you can see at the top there, you've got 2 graphs, one showing before the trial and one after. So before the trial, you can see people are very spread out in terms of their interest and awareness in the idea. And after the trial, you can see how it's all bunched up on one end. But also, interestingly, the graph at the bottom there, you've got the desire to continue. Sometimes the acid test of an idea is when it's taken away, how people react. And this was also really interesting to us, that people wanted it, even though the trial had finished. So clearly, as you can see, there's interest in the concept, and you know, the idea has value. We also anecdotally received a lot of qualitative feedback, which was also very positive. People really saw benefits in the idea straight away. We went on to develop our MVP, and we did a second trial during the build. And again, the concept was very well received. However, the way it was presented, we were focusing very much on that graph. People didn't find that relatable, I suppose. And so now, if you have the Greener Hour app, you'll see it leads with information on your impact and your carbon saving using real world examples rather than the graph itself. We did a third trial, which is more recent. So we did that in March this year, which was a 3-week in-home trial. And it was really interesting, the results, how positive they were, how people became more sort of carbon conscious and more carbon literate over the time. These numbers are on a scale of 1 to 10. You can see how it moved from a 5.3 to a 7.2. And also how it's improved in terms of people feeling control of their emissions at home. So clearly the app was showing that it had an impact on people's sort of daily behaviour change, but also it was warming people up to sort of bigger behaviour change, so a sort of broader behaviour change. And if you actually look at these other figures at the bottom there, interest in having more efficient heating systems, 63% of people actually sort of were more interested in those bigger issues. So clearly all the trials show us the need for these sort of behavioural nudges. So probably now is a good time for me to hand over to Guy as the behavioural scientist to talk to you a little bit more about that.
Thank you very much. Right, let's see if I can do a near seamless switch from one deck to another deck. Hang on a second. Hopefully that's worked and everyone can see that now. So yes, when it comes to behavior change, so I wanted to share just a few slides with everyone. I suppose not talking so much about greener hours, but more broadly about the importance of behavior change in this space.
Sorry to interrupt, Guy. We've lost your slides again. Could you have a go?
Hang on a second. Bear with me. Sorry about that. I'm not sure. Is that there?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, apologies. So, yes, obviously the behavior change piece is an interesting one. We've used this slide, mind the gap, because there's often a lot of talk about the sort of attitude behavior gap when it comes to certainly behaviors around climate change or environmental issues or sustainability more broadly, in the sense that obviously a lot of people always say in surveys they really believe in this stuff, but we often don't see the behaviors coming through. And it's an interesting challenge, I suppose, for sort of behavioral scientists to work out, can we somehow try and get around this gap? And I think there are some ways that we can do that with creativity. The other reason that we think that this is so important is, we would probably make this statement that actually, no disrespect meant to anyone who works in technology, but actually, in some ways, we can say that actually technology doesn't disrupt markets, behavior does. And I think if we think about that for a second and think about some of the companies that we know very well, that we put on a pedestal from a technology point of view, I think there's an argument to say these are behavior change companies rather than technology companies, in the sense that if Uber were not able to persuade us to travel differently, they wouldn't have made an impact. Same with Airbnb. Unless there's an underlying shift in behavior, the technology sort of counts for nothing, in the sense that no one uses it. So it may sound a little bit like semantics, but I do think it's an interesting distinction, because when we start to think about it from a behavior point of view, we then potentially start to see what it is about these particular applications, these particular solutions, in terms of how they actually work. And there's some very counterintuitive and interesting research that sort of points at some of the mechanisms behind both Uber and Airbnb and a lot of other platforms that suggests that actually, where there should be sort of rational value, if you like, those aren't the things that make it work. It's on some of the sort of the more irrational pieces. And the reason this is interesting from a behavioral science point of view is, we start to incorporate, I suppose, into our thinking the fact that we move very quickly in terms of how we think. And certainly in the startup journey, we all labor over the idea that we have. And the reality is, of course, our users, our consumers, just simply won't concentrate nearly as much. And this opens up a very interesting challenge, I suppose, and opportunity in terms of how we can engage people, in this case, around behavior change in terms of sustainability and carbon emissions. I got two very quick examples here to make the point about how we tend not to process information particularly well, because we always think that we're exempt from these sorts of examples. But if I show you this image just here, and you can see the squares A and B marked on that checkerboard, and if I asked you, which of those two squares is darker, if it's any consolation, I've seen this thousands of times and I use it a lot. And square A is clearly darker to me as I'm looking at this. And of course, you probably now worked out that that is not the truth, that actually they are exactly the same shade of grey, squares A and B. And to sort of make that point, I can sort of dismantle it bit by bit. And you can actually see that the two squares are exactly the same color. Some people sometimes think this last slide's been manipulated and I changed the gray on that last piece. But the reality is they're the same color. Why do we not see it? Well, because we're using a mental shortcut to process the information, and we recognize the checkerboard pattern. And so we immediately see that as a sort of light, dark pattern. And we know there's some interference, but we still see it as B being lighter, or most of us do anyway, because we're looking for shortcuts. And when we understand people make these types of shortcuts, it becomes very useful for thinking about how we can design for behavior change. If I show you this image, for example, and I ask you, what do you see? Or maybe more precisely, how many dolphins do you see? Probably a lot of you are still not yet seeing the dolphins, but there are, I think, 9 dolphins in that image. And the reason we tend not to see it is because we have prior associations. And as adults, those prior associations are far stronger to see one particular image rather than actually see the dolphins. If you show this picture to a 10-year-old, they can immediately see the dolphins. So these are interesting sort of, I suppose, peculiarities, I suppose, that we start to sort of take into consideration, which allow us to potentially identify what may feel like quite inconsequential hooks, but that can be really useful if we're trying to drive a change in behavior. An example I was involved in for a few years over in the US was trying to persuade people to buy super energy efficient appliances for their homes. They're not wholly indifferent to or wholly different to greener hours, but if you look at this problem, a lot of people start by saying, well, why don't consumers choose super efficient products? And if you look at it from a behavior point of view, the answer is actually glaringly obvious, is that no one chooses at all. In the sense that in the US or here in Europe, I think we're still counted as that, there's a label on the side of the product, but that label simply tells you in which category this particular product sits. So actually, even though you might choose to buy a super efficient product, at the end of the day, all you can do is pick a product. In other words, you have to almost choose one at random if you're trying to buy it based on its energy efficiency performance. You can obviously choose a specific brand and a size, etc., and other features, but actually energy efficiency is what's often called a shrouded attribute. You can't actually choose based on that attribute, and that's that potentially in one fell swoop explains why more people don't buy super efficient products. The option to choose is corrupted. So we played with the idea of saying, well, actually, what would happen if we gave every single product its own relative efficiency score? So get rid of the labels and instead introduce a score that is relevant for that particular machine, and it's comparing it next to all the relevant other machines. So this would be a particular size washing machine with certain features. The question was, would this make a difference if you could actually see what the relative efficiency was of a particular machine? So we introduced this, we did a number of trials. We introduced a second piece of information as well, which would say, well, actually, if you chose this machine, which is a 98 out of 100, so it's extremely efficient, we also quantified what those savings would be for the user. So in other words, you can see what a typical machine would consume and how much you'd save in effect over a typical lifetime of this product. And we thought these two bits of information together, it would be interesting to see whether that changes people's behavior. What we found was the score did. So even controlling for pro-environmental, pro-sustainability attitudes, people chose more efficient machines when they could see the relative efficiency of the machine. And this in itself was a very interesting result, because in the US, they've been relying on rebates, $50, $100 off certain machines, and we could say straight away, well, actually, you could save yourself that $50 straight away, because just simply telling people which are the most efficient machines is more effective than giving money off. However, we found that this bit of information did not work. And we found this is really strange. Why would people not want to save money, essentially? And then again, we went back to this idea of thinking that people are just processing information so quickly. So we thought, well, actually, can we change the way we give them this information? And this is something called the cognitive reflection test. And there are three relatively simple but slightly trippy maths questions just here. And whilst you have a look at those, the point to make here is actually, when shown to a huge sample, 90% of people get at least one of these questions wrong. And these are actually, this sample is graduates of Ivy League universities in the US, so arguably quite smart people. 90% get at least one of those questions wrong. However, if you simply change the font to one that is harder to read, that rate goes from 90% down to 35%. Now, ostensibly, it's the same sample, it's the same maths problems. The only thing that's changed is the font, but the error rate drops, or the number of mistakes, I should say, drops dramatically. Why is it? Well, one argument for this is it's what's called a disfluency effect. The fact that it's harder to read means we pay more attention. If we pay more attention, we get the maths right. So quite counterintuitively, we played around changing this information by using a different font. And it's this one here, sort of, I'm not even sure how you pronounce that, Heitenschweiler. And we simply put the same information in a different font, and lo and behold, we saw this suddenly then made a difference. So something quite counterintuitive, something which seemed relatively inconsequential, a little tweak of font meant that actually suddenly that information then became highly effective at changing people's choices. And that, together with the badge, so that column on the far right-hand side, had the best overall effect. And so with this, we were showing with no money changing hands, we could dramatically influence the products that people chose. And quite interestingly, we found this worked for Democrats and Republicans. So in the US, this is a really thorny issue that Republicans don't like being told about energy efficiency. Yet, strangely, the information we gave them seemed to work well. And we think it was because it was just giving people the the choice. They could actually make better choices as a result. We also played around, almost doing quite a novel sort of behavioural segmentation to find out how energy efficiency ranks or sort of defends its corner, if you like, depending on the type of or the context in which you're making a purchase. So if you're remodeling your home, that's a planned purchase rather than the washing machine's broken, which is probably the more typical purchase. And interestingly, we found in here that actually, under stressed purchase conditions, energy efficiency becomes far less important to people. And I think this was the first time someone had looked at sort of a behavioural segmentation in terms of why you're buying or the context in which you're buying. And this led to sort of revisions on the platform whereby you could try and find out whether people were making a rush purchase. And if they were doing so, then we could put different information in front of them sooner to try and make sure that energy efficiency stayed relevant for them. We also looked at something which was very interesting around consumer lay theories. This is the last one to make, really. And lay theories are very interesting. This is the concept that we carry around certain preconceptions, and they're quite often misplaced, around, for example, that energy efficient products cost more money to buy. That's probably exacerbated in the US because of these rebates they offer on the products. But we found across multiple markets that people think energy efficiency costs more. And actually, the data say that that's not the case at all. You can spend $10,000 on a washing machine if you really want to, but you don't need to get energy efficient. So even identifying these lay theories is interesting. We sort of found ways to dismantle these in terms of making people realize that actually they're laboring under a sort of a false belief around certain products. And again, we shouldn't underestimate how powerful these lay beliefs are, these lay theories are. It's a very similar one around whole organic food, whole foods, and the price of those things. And obviously with whole foods that is to a certain extent true, but you get this sort of halo effect, almost like a negative halo effect, that people tend to think that I simply can't afford to be part of the solution here, and that's not the case. And we mustn't make those assumptions that people understand the information. We sort of found ways to step in very early on and dismantle those so that they stayed on the journey sort of through the process. So to finish off, I think the reason that behavioural science is particularly important, both for greener hours, but also more broadly for the climate change, sort of pro-environmental sustainability piece, is it does allow us to look at the problem slightly differently. We end up looking at little bits of the experience or the solution or the problem, which we ordinarily wouldn't look at. But what behavioural science tells us is that maybe this is worth looking at. Going back to the idea with Uber, who would have thought taking the map off the app would stop people using the app? All that same information is presented somewhere else, but there's something about the little car moving on the app that makes people use it. Similarly with Airbnb, there's a sort of, from a value point of view, it should make no difference. But when hosts have professionally shot photographs of themselves, not of their property, those properties rent out more often and for higher prices. So behavioural science allows us to maybe sort of challenge some of those assumptions and look into certain corners that we ordinarily wouldn't look at. And it also presents us with quite interesting and counterintuitive ways to make little tweaks that we think should make no difference, but can have a huge difference in terms of people using the service and potentially gets us over this attitude behaviour gap. That we find different ways to engage the behaviour without necessarily having to have the pro-environmental attitude there in the first place. So I really think it can be our sort of secret and particularly hot sauce. And this is the last quote I want to leave you with, is that it's incredibly important to keep these things in mind. This is a quote from Daniel Kahneman, and he says, in the economy of action, effort is a cost, and the acquisition of skill is driven by the balance of benefits and costs, and laziness is built deep into our nature. I think this is a great quote anyway for the value of behavioural science, but for me at least, it rings so true if we're trying to bring around behaviour change in this particular context that we're talking about. We really have to think cleverly and creatively, certainly about how to use tech, but also I'd say how to use the psychology behind it as well, to reduce that perception of effort, to get the changes that we want. And that's it. Thank you very much indeed. I'll let Mike grab the screen back.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Guy, and also Ness for taking us through the app and that fascinating piece on behavioural science, which just really blew my mind actually. So yeah, thank you very much. Be great to get a round of applause from the audience if you want to pick your favourite household appliance to put in, or you can clap if it's more conventional. yeah, no, fascinating stuff, and yeah, we've got some good questions for you coming through. So thank you very much for that. Cool. I just had one question just to kick it off, if that's all right. And I mentioned that I've been using the app, and not sure whoever would like to answer, but just on the sort of collection of points and gamification, I believe you're going to be kind of putting points that users earn towards green initiatives, sort of locally and further afield. Can you talk us through how that might work?
Who's going to get this?
Go for it, Guy.
Well, I'll say the first couple of bits. So obviously, there's a lot of research being done into how points work, and how they can be an incentive and a sort of motivation. One of the downsides of points is it can make us a little bit more sort of egocentric. So we become a little bit more obsessed about what's in it for us, and so that's something which we don't want to happen. So we want to incentivize people and have a sort of building experience, but we don't want to switch off that sort of pro-social benefit by suddenly people becoming far more sort of egoistic in what they're doing. So the idea there is that soon points will allow two things to happen. One, you'll be able to donate your points, and you can maybe earn points collectively towards chosen local sort of good causes. So that might be something for your local primary school, or it could be lots of other initiatives. So there's an incentive there to sort of work collectively, but also we're exploring whether points can also be used to be almost like a sort of a ramp into engaging us in wider things we can do at home. So maybe it is about buying smarter appliances. Maybe it's even thinking about taking an EV for a test drive, or basically just trying to remove some of those barriers. And the idea there is that maybe if people become slightly more sensitized to not just the importance of reducing carbon, but also their potential contribution to that. And the idea of, could we possibly work with a number of partners just to make it additionally easy? So whether it's extended test drives or some sort of preferential rate or whatever it may be, but really to try and use those points as a ramp into saying to someone, look at all the other things you could potentially do at home. You're not going to be able to do all of them, but you certainly don't have to be constrained by what you do on a sort of daily basis. There might be other sort of one-offs you can do. So the points will be trying to do those two things.
Yeah, it's got huge potential, isn't it? As you say, just a few examples you gave there, but there's probably hundreds of things which you could sort of tune people into looking at maybe a little bit quicker than they had planned.
We think so, which is why we were asking those. Ness shared those questions in the survey, where we, in the last trial we did, and we know that there's a huge distance to go in terms of the app doing what we want it to do, but conceptually at least, we're already starting to see that actually people are far more favorable, significantly more favorable towards other solutions as a result of, I think, just their awareness, being a little sharper, and their appreciation of what they can potentially do. We saw that sort of, which is really encouraging, considering how not basic, but how stripped back the experience still is.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you for that. We'll jump into the questions then. So first one is from Julie, who asks, how variable is the 24-hour pattern and from location to location? If it isn't much, would it be better to push a message for people to use appliances after 8 p.m, for example?
Yeah, it's enormously variable if you watch it over time. It varies throughout the seasons, and it varies from region to region. So yeah, you can get your notification at 8 p.m. the night before, and the app actually gives you a sort of 72-hour forecast ahead, so you can see what's coming up. But you can see this huge variation. Obviously, whether the wind's blowing or the sun's shining, you're going to get enormous variations. And in the wintertime, obviously, solar is very low. So a lot of the time, the greener hour is actually at night. We sort of debated long and hard about whether we were even going to. So there are a lot of people who don't necessarily have a delay function on their appliances, and so maybe wouldn't want to use their appliances at night. But when we looked at it and talked to some of the users, there's plenty of people who actually do want to put their dishwasher on in the middle of the night. One of the software developers actually on it set his alarm to I don't know whether he's still doing that at the time, so that he could put on his washing machine in the greener hour. But as the product develops, you will be able to tailor your experience so that you can have the greener hours coming in a window that is sort of appropriate to you and suits your life. So, but yeah, the variation is enormous.
Fantastic. Yeah, certainly getting up at 4 in the morning is not weird for me with a 2-year-old. So yeah, I'm sure that plays a part. Great stuff. Thanks for that question. Next one we've got from Austin, who says, I just looked at the website and noticed the app isn't available outside of the UK. Will this be something you'll expand to the EU or even worldwide?
I mean, that would be lovely. That would be we've had not all countries are in a position where they have this data available. So we launched in the UK because obviously we have all the data available through the API. So and there are other Northern European markets who have a vast amount of information that we could launch and use when we're ready. So yeah.
Great stuff. Thanks for that one. We've got another one from Julie, I think. Is there a non-app facility for those of us who don't have smartphones, which is quite a large number of people in the UK?
Yeah, well, my mum just uses the notifications, so she can't manage the app. So she literally has the notifications by text every day, and she does her washing around it, and plugs in her EV and anything, charges her mobile phone, whatever, around it. So yeah, that would be the solution.
Fantastic, great stuff. Thanks for that. Do you have example graphs of time versus energy use or clean energy availability over 24 hours? So we can see the variation for a typical UK location. Thanks to Chris for putting a link up on this, but yeah, do you have anything to add on that?
So we show it. So in the app, you can see it for the I think you can see it for the 24 hours that we're in now, and you can see ahead for the next 48 hours. Because interestingly enough, the carbon intensity, it's modelled rather than measured. It takes a number of. I think it works primarily off weather forecasting, and also it looks at the marginal cost being paid by the national grid for power coming onto the grid, and it understands actually really what that marginal cost refers to in terms of power source, etc. So it is predicted. And if you go into the app, you can see, if you have a smartphone, you can sort of see what it looks like. As Ness mentioned, on some days it's very, very flat. On other days, and I think quite recently, it's been absolutely roller coaster like. You've seen these huge troughs and peaks, really, really quite extreme. And I think for us, we're always saying, well, if it's a relatively flat day, there will still be inflection points in that curve somewhere where we can say, well, let's still try and aim for those. But also sometimes you can have a flat day, but it's still a relatively low day. In other words, that the sort of carbon intensity is hovering around 100 grams, per kilowatt hour, for example. So we probably have more work to. Well, we certainly have more work to do in terms of making the messaging more compelling. To say that if you open the app and you see a flat day, it doesn't mean I can't really be bothered today. There's still there's still benefits to be had, really, in terms of the contribution we can make. But yes, it varies. It varies dramatically. And I think the other thing to mention briefly, sorry for rambling on this one, but the view is as more and more renewables power the grid, the variability each day will get greater. So at the moment, I think it averages about by a factor of about 1.7 per day in terms of the peak and the trough. And we haven't seen a number for the UK, but they've modelled it for other countries as more and more renewables are on the grid. That factor could increase to almost 7. And the doorbell's just gone, which is my cue to shut up and just go and get the package.
Yeah, go for it. Thanks for that, guy. So one for you then, Ness. Do you have plans to integrate with smart devices? Great question from Albie Baker-Smith.
Yeah.
For example, running devices while you're not at home.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, that's the longer term plan. Yes, that goes without saying that we and yes, that would be something. So that would just take out all the human error in it.
Great stuff. Thank you for that. Another one as well, just following on from that, from Albie. I think the app is great, but I found it sometimes suggests times to use appliances in the middle of the night. Do you have plans for addressing this? I guess that's around the warning, isn't it? The kind of advanced warning that you get as to what hour it could be. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good point. And like I said, we definitely kind of flirted with the idea of not including the night at all, because some people felt very strongly that they didn't want to see a greener hour during the night because that would sort of render it impossible for them. But then we have our users who want to be able to set the delay function on their machines or plug in their EVs during the night. So yeah, it's a difficult one, but our way around it, and software developers are working on this, is actually each individual can tailor it to a time that suits them. So they could, for example, say, well, actually, I only want to know daytime hours. I only want, I don't want to know, because I would never use my dishwasher in the middle of the night, kind of thing. Or I only want to use it when I'm at home, home working or whatever it is, so that you could tailor it and it would be a very sort of personalized experience. But yeah, that absolutely is work in progress. So yeah, Albie, thank you. It's something that we will be doing in the days to come.
Great, thanks for that. So we've got one from Chris Poynton. Are manufacturers thinking of putting greener hours capabilities right into the appliances so the washing machine suggests a good time to run the load, for example?
I think that's I'm sure the answer is yes. I think that's an interesting one. I think that really hits on the sort of the technology versus behavior sort of divide, in the sense that, we know, sale of smart appliances is still really low because consumers don't really yet see a benefit for it. So I think there's definitely partly education, but also I just think there are probably smarter ways we can get into it. And I think that's partly what greener hours would try and do. In other words, if we can get people to change their behavior almost manually by using the app, then they may well then become more receptive to, if Bosch then releases a washing machine that could in some way read the carbon intensity directly. You could say, well, actually now I can see that this is a solution to a problem that I know exists. Whereas at the moment, I think a lot of smart appliances are a solution to a problem the consumer doesn't really have. We in the work we did in the US, we worked with one utility that was basically taking half the cost of a smart thermostat, a Nest thermostat. So you could buy it for sort of $75 rather than $150, but the proviso was that the utility was going in and configuring the thermostat, that the utility would have control over the thermostat, so they could use it as part of a sort of demand response initiative. And of course, the utility was delighted because they managed to sell 500,000 thermostats in less than a month because they were half price. I think it was 3 months after the deal closed. Less than 10% of their thermostats still had that function enabled. Everyone had gone back in and basically taken off the ability for the utility to do anything. So I think there's a mixture of, it's not a problem I need to solve, and there's a certain amount of skepticism on the part of the consumer in terms of smart appliances. So I think we see greener hours as playing quite an important part in both sensitizing, but also filling in that gap, I suppose, between what we currently have and ultimately what may be sort of, home hub driven solutions. There's a lot of behavior change to happen in that process to get consumers to pull that technology towards them rather than having it sort of pushed towards them. Yeah,
fantastic. That's really interesting. Cool. I'm going to combine two questions from Julie here. Firstly, have you thought about having a web page version of the app for people without phones? And secondly, will there be plans to charge people for using the app, or is there a sort of premium, I suppose, version of the app that might require cost?
Who's going to answer that one?
I don't mind. You go for it then. Both speaking together. Sorry.
No. You go. No, you go. I'm very happy to let you answer that. Of course.
I mean, sorry. What was the second half of the question?
I think that was about sort of charging for using the app. I know it's free at the moment, but do you think sort of future versions of it might require subscription or an upfront charge?
Yeah, that is very much work in progress as well. So we're really hoping not. We don't plan on a subscription model at all. Guy's talked a little bit about how we might develop a marketplace off the back of the app that would be, once people are sort of sensitized to sort of more sensitized to to carbon savings more, and sort of more carbon literate, that they would be more open to sort of other green products. But yeah, no, we don't intend to actually charge for the app itself. That's not something that's in our master plan. We're actually in the process of fundraising at the moment. So we have a grant application and so on. But that's all very much work in progress.
I think the one area where we might look at some sort of subscription is if there were, as the sort of as businesses, corporates look to engage employees, and maybe they look to see the potential they could have outside of their core business to sort of influence carbon emissions. And if you employ 25,000 people, you could see that actually greener hours could be quite an interesting proposition to say, well, if we sort of gave this to our employees, we as a company could make quite a difference here. And I think for something like that, we sort of haven't dismissed the idea that maybe there's a version there which could be sort of a subscription model. But I think for everyone at home, it sort of defeats the object slightly for us. I think if we were to try and put a charge in there somewhere, because the whole point of it is to get everyone just onto that ramp of that sort of daily, not thinking about it too hard, sort of in the same way you check your weather app. We'd love to get to a point where everyone's just, what's my carbon intensity looking like for today? What can I sort of change at home? And I think to take as much friction out of that is really important. And I think obviously money just gets in the way, as it always does.
Yeah, no, good stuff. Thank you for that. Just following up with that last question from Julie. I think just in terms of charging, I think she says, I was just wondering whether the fact that you're a business and need to make profit is hindering you from rollout. That is, you aren't configured as a campaign organisation.
Yes, well, I don't think it's hindering us at the moment, because we're still so we are genuinely motivated to A, make a difference with this, and B, we think there is an opportunity to do it through a slightly unusual sort of behaviour change approach. I think our sort of belief long term in the sort of for it to sustain itself, we think, well, actually, if we find a situation where lots of people are doing this, then there will be a way that it can sustain. But the primary objective is, because it was for us, it was an eye opener, to Ness's earlier slides. First of all, realizing that being on a green tariff doesn't mean to say you've done the job and you can now just sort of go about and think, go about your day and think you've done all you can do. There's this horrendous trust issue that we think is about to become a big issue. Right at the moment, we want every consumer to be on side and do this. I think that's not with every utility, but certainly with enough that's going to basically sort of destroy trust there. Our thought was actually there is something. People can be far more efficacious than they realise. So yeah, that is the primary motivation still, and we're just probably naively optimistic that we'll find a way for it to sustain itself in time.
Yeah, great stuff. Certainly hope so. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for those questions. We have got 2 or 3 still coming through, but I think we'll try and keep to time, and I'll invite Hannah back to just tell us about some events coming up and all the rest of it. But yeah, thank you very much for answering those questions. If anyone is still available to hang on and see the answers to those questions, then Ness and Guy have very kindly offered to hang around for a few minutes afterwards. So thank you for that. And we'll hand over to Hannah, and I'll bring you both back very shortly.
Cool. Thanks, guys. That was such a great talk. So interesting and so refreshing to hear a talk that talks about behaviours and tech together, and doesn't just talk about tech as a panacea is going to solve everything. I'm firmly in the same camp with you guys, that I think tech is an enabler, but really it's behaviours and systems that come first. So that was absolutely fascinating, and we've had some really great feedback and comments in the chat, with people agreeing and saying the same thing. So thank you both so much for the time that you've given us today. So my job now is to bookend the session. We like to try and finish promptly with the main body of content by 1:30, because we know that many of you will have work to get back to, or need a screen break, or whatever. You know, our attention in front of the screen is a premium, isn't it? So I'm just going to sort of officially end the session, and then, as Mike said, we'll bring Ness and Guy back on to finish off the last of the few questions. So I am just going to bring our slides back up and just talk you through a couple of other bits and bobs happening within our community at the moment. So we mentioned at the start of the session that we are sponsored by AdLib, but we are supported by 2 other fantastic organisations. One of those is the Future Economy Network. If you are in business and you are interested in learning how to green that business some more, definitely check out the Future Economy Network. They're one of the largest green business networks in the UK, and they have an office just down the road from me when I'm at home in Bristol, at the bottom of Gloucester Road, which has networking space and co-working space as well. I've picked out a couple of upcoming events that I thought were of interest. There is one called The Path to a Sustainable Energy Future, which seemed quite relevant to today. That's on the 15th of June, 6 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. And guess what? Some of these events are in person now. How very, very exciting. I believe that one is. And then there's also another one that I think is really sweet. It's called the Sustainability Tea Break. It's just a half an hour event online for people to get together and network, which I think, short and sweet, is lovely. So check out the Future Economy Network, also known as FEN. For those of you that are based in Bristol, do check out the Bristol Green Capital Partnership if you haven't already been along to one of their events or heard of them. It's an incredible organisation. There's over 1,000 organisations in Bristol. Green Tech Southwest is one of those organisations, all working together to try and find ways that the city can be sustainable. They have a Green Mingle, which is currently still an online networking event. It takes place from 5:30 to 7. I absolutely, personally love these events. They're one of my favourite things to go along to. You hear a few presentations about things going on in the area, and you get a chance to meet people. So Bristol Green Capital Partnership is definitely something to check out. And if you're in the southwest, you could definitely pop along as well. And last but not least, we have Climate Action Tech, who are another organisation that we work very closely with and who are a fantastic support to what we do. In fact, I'm sure that many of you that are here today will have heard about today's event through Climate Action Tech. And if you're a member of the Slack group, you'll probably see me posting and chatting and doing quite a lot of stuff in that community. So Climate Action Tech is a global community of over 4,000 tech sector workers. There is a Slack community, which is a great place to chat and ask questions, and they also run their own events called Cat Salons, the next one of which is May the 25th. It's between 6 p.m. and 7 p.m. UK time, and the topic is the quest for buildings energy transformation. That caught my eye because we had Mauro give a talk, what was it, back in June or July of last year, about a similar topic. So it's something we've covered before, and we all know that building energy has huge impact and opportunities for improvement. So check out Climate Action Tech if you haven't already. In terms of awesome events, of course, we have our next few lined up. We're very excited to have George Sandilands, who is CEO and founder of Spherix, coming to talk about engaging SMEs in achieving net zero emissions. So what they're doing at Spherix is creating a really interesting tool that connects with accounting software to actually give a carbon footprint for an entire business. So I think George's event is going to be really interesting. It'd be super interesting to hear how he's getting on with building that app as well. And following that, for those of you that are more techie like me, you might be interested in our July event with Dan Lewis-Tokley, who's going to be talking about the new cloud carbon footprinting tool. It's open source, it's free to use. I've already heard Dan give a talk about it once, and if you're a dev using cloud services, you definitely want to come and check out that tool. It's really, really interesting. So just to finish up and sum up, thank you again all for coming along today. We saw that there are about 55 of you that have joined in live today, which is awesome. And we're really grateful for your continued attendance and support. If you have any feedback, please do let us know what you're thinking. It's tough for us, everything being online. We really miss having a little chat with you in person at the event. So, and that's how we would pick up a lot of feedback about what we could do differently and do better to really support this community. So if you have some feedback and you have a few minutes, please don't be shy. Let us know what you're thinking. You'll have an email pop through from Meetup shortly. We'd love it if you could fill that in. And we're also always available on our email at greentechsw@gmail.com. So we monitor that all the time and always get back to people. And then last but not least, if you've enjoyed today's session and would like to show a way to say thanks, you can always plant trees in our ecology forest, which we mentioned at the beginning. I think we've got about 1,400 trees in that forest now, and that's all come from the Green Tech Southwest community. And we're incredibly grateful to you all for those donations of trees. Okay, so that's me done. We can hand back to Mike, Guy and Ness to finish up. But once again, just a huge thank you for being a part of our community today. Your attendance is never taken for granted by us, and we're very grateful to have you here. And we hope to see you all again soon for one of our next events. Okay.
Thanks very much, Anna.
Thank you, and I'll hand back to you to finish up.
Great stuff, thank you. Just got 2 questions left in the section here. So just got one from Vicky Smith. Looking at the app, why would there be such a peak in carbon intensity in my area, brackets London, at 4 AM versus the rest of the day?
What was the weather like?
It could all be gas is being used. That there's there's a balancing issue. So normally when there are sort of quite severe spikes, I think it's because there's a bit of emergency supply issues, and obviously gas is turnable, onable. It's sort of nuclear can't be done like that. Renewables, can't be on demand in that respect. So I'm not quite sure what's going on at 4 o'clock in the morning, but I'd hazard a guess that's what was causing it. But at least it's quite interesting to ask the question, I guess. This is one of the interesting things that people start to sort of poke around and say, why would that be? And it's interesting when you look across the whole of the UK, you see quite a lot of variation, obviously, because where you are makes a huge difference as well. So I think even just noticing that is a good sign.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's really interesting how much there is. People are becoming more interested in this as a subject, which is great, because it should become a bit like the weather. That you check the weather before you get dressed in the morning, and you should check the carbon intensity forecast before you switch anything on. Obviously, there are some things that you can't relate to time, and you need a cup of coffee when you need a cup of coffee, sort of thing. But yeah, it sort of needs to become a habit. And I've just noticed that, there's the National Grid do tweet quite a lot about what's going on, and they do sometimes sort of offer explanations for why something's happened, which I always find really interesting. That sort of, I've seen it sort of happen over the years, that it's become more of a thing. And I think Sky TV have also recently just started running a show which actually gives you some carbon intensity data, which is great, because it shows that I'm guessing they've check that people are interested before they've broadcasted it. But that's hopefully the more you sort of give people this information, the more they kind of engage and it starts to resonate. So
yeah, fantastic. And I guess more people working from home and being at home, I suppose the difference between the first trial and kind of the more recent stuff, you've probably seen even more engagement, haven't you, on that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Great stuff. We have a slightly more technical question from John Waters.
Oh dear.
Is there, or might there be, an API exposed to enable other tools to integrate this information? For example, to enable control software to use this information.
Wow.
We fancy that.
I don't think either of us fancy that one, but I'll have a go for 10 seconds. I think so. I'm sure that is the case, and I think that's not a problem for us at all. I think I think it goes back to a similar thing that we sort of mentioned already, in the sense that we've no doubt that could exist, and we can absolutely see what the benefits would be. Our motivation is, I suppose, and this will take no more than 30 seconds, but I think when Netflix first started, there weren't the codecs in place to allow us to stream content, high quality content across, there wasn't the broadband infrastructure in place, but they were still putting DVDs in jiffy bags, because they knew that actually their fundamental proposition was you can watch what you want to watch when you want to watch it. And then they sort of migrated over time to say, actually, now rather than jiffy bags and DVDs, we can basically stream it, etc. But the point is, they stayed very focused on the behavior and meeting that consumer need, I suppose, or that desire. And I think that's where we see us sitting in this, that there's no doubt that at some point in the probably relatively near future, these capabilities will absolutely be in place, and everyone's homes will be humming with synchronized smart appliances and what have you. But we still see there's a huge lifting job to be done in terms of getting consumers, those of us who don't work in energy for a living, and have busy lives and are distracted, etc. There's a huge job to be done there to make those people receptive to those technologies as and when they become available. And there is a long way to go, I think, before that happens, once it goes past the early adopter sort of, segment. So I'm sure that is the case, and it would be great if that is the case, that question. Even more reason for us, I think, to make sure we've got as many receptive and sort of eager consumers ready for whatever benefits additional APIs can provide at the time.
Yeah, great stuff. Thank you very much for that. And I think Hannah's very kindly put a link in the chat there for carbonintensity.org.uk if anyone wants to check that out as well. So that's great. I think that is a full set. Very well done for fielding some of those, some quite tricky and some really good questions, which hopefully give you a bit of insight. I suppose getting feedback at this stage is everything, isn't it? In terms of the journey of the app. So what's next for Greener Hours? That's my last question.
Lunch.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, we're doing some fundraising. We can see so much where this product can go, and there's just a huge amount of opportunity out there, and so we're fundraising to improve the products. We can see in all the different ways that it can improve. So it's kind of exciting, because if all that comes off, there's so much we can do to make this happen. So yeah, lots of fingers and toes crossed.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're all obviously behind you, so yeah, look forward to watching it grow from strength to strength. And yeah, no, just best of luck with
Thank you.
sort of the decision, the funding, and obviously getting things going. So yeah, thank you very much again, both of you, for giving up your time, and fantastic talk today, and really good to see all the engagement and questions. So
well, thank you.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
It's
just
been great.
A reminder, no problem at all. Just a reminder that Ellen will be wrapping up all the links. Everything that's been discussed will kind of go out later this afternoon to everyone in the meetup group. So we'll be able to watch this back as well using this link shortly afterwards. So thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you at the next one. And yeah, thank you very much, Guy and Ness again. And yeah, very best of luck, and hope everything goes well.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
No problem. Take care. Thanks, everyone.